Hi, friends. I am really, really excited about getting to spend this time with you. This is the what I've started calling the 12 and 12 workshop. It's 12. I what I said was it's the 12 most important things I've learned in the last 12 years. As I was preparing, I realized that those superlatives feel really overwhelming. I don't know if anyone else is like this, but there are people in my life that if you ask them, what's your favorite color, what's your favorite song, or what's your favorite place to eat, or something like that, they just kind of freeze because they're not prepared to pick a number one favorite above all. You also might be like me, and I say everything's my favorite, and I truly mean it. But with this, trying to really pick the 12 most important things I've learned in the last 12 years was really I started to get stuck. And so instead, I let myself off the hook a little bit. And these are 12 super important things that I've learned in the last 12 years in no particular order. Also, the reason that we're talking about 12 is because just a few weeks ago, we had our 12th anniversary of My Corner of the Internet. 12 years ago, as of a couple weeks ago, is when I started my very first blog. And it was a travel blog, and it was documenting this journey that I was doing around the world, where I was doing, humanitarian work in all these different countries. And I never had thought about doing a blog. It just was not on my radar. But the organization that puts the trip together had asked us to keep one, partially as a fundraising effort, but also to keep our family and friends up to date on what we were going through. And, it was great for marketing for them. And I decided to take it really seriously. And so I wrote a blog post a week for a year. And it was so crazy because women started to follow it. And before I knew it, I had fallen in love with writing. And, week by week, I was getting better at it. And then also, I was getting emails from women who were saying, I'm not in Tanzania right now, but the thing that you're going through really, or the thing that you just learned really spoke to me in this thing that I'm going through in my life here in Colorado. And it felt like I was sort of leading this online version of a small group, which basically I think is my calling in life, is being a small group leader. But it's just kind of a bigger group at this point. And so that was really 12 years ago. And it's so cool because now we've sort of circled back. I'm traveling again. My family and I just moved to Spain, and I'm blogging again, which feels so good. Although I haven't in the last couple of weeks, but it's because my kids have been out of school, which has been wild for anyone who has done summer as a parent, as a working parent, with kids at home. It's a little crazy. But they started school a couple of days ago. So blog posts to come. And so, so a couple weeks ago, we had a big celebration. I made it sort of like middle school themed because we're 12, and so it was fun to dig up old photos of me as a 12-year-old. They're pretty wild. And so I said, if we threw a big sale in both of my shops. I have my shop, it's StephanieMayWilson.com or StephanieMayWilsonShop.com. And that's where I have all of my resources and tools and things to help you in your different relationships and in transitions and to make decisions. It's my books, my courses, things like that. And then about a year ago, I founded a brand new shop called the Girls Night Gift Shop, inspired by the Girls Night podcast, but also inspired by my love of best friends. And I had an experience where I was traveling. I did a girls trip with a couple of my friends that all live in different places. And we said, we need girls trip shirts because we thought they'd be fun for photos, and we thought they'd be a fun souvenir. And we thought that they would just be this silly, fun thing. But we couldn't find any we liked. And so I said, why don't I make some? I've had sweatshirts in the for our Girls Night podcast for a long time. Why don't I try to do this? And I loved the process, and it has become this really fun, creative passion project for me. And I love getting to create sort of the cozier version of friendship bracelets for best friends, especially best friends who live far away from each other, which is the case for me and most of my friends, especially now that I live in Spain. And so anyway, to celebrate our 12-year anniversary, we did a big sale. And I said, hey, listen, if you order anything during this week, during this big sale, I'm going to give you, I have a gift for you. And it's this workshop. And it's 12 important things that I've learned in the last 12 years. They're not necessarily about work, but I think all of them probably apply. They're not necessarily about starting something new or, founding a business or writing a blog or starting a podcast or anything. But again, they apply. And yeah, I'm just really excited to share this with you. So to make sure we don't go too long, I want to go ahead and jump in. So here's the 12, not the most important things, because again, that gave me like instant writer's block, but 12 important things that I've learned in the last 12 years. So like I said, these are not really in a particular order. They're just sort of in the order that they came to mind. So the first one is really fresh in my mind right now because I have 2 3-year-olds and I have to think about this a lot these days. But number one is boundaries aren't about what someone else is going to do. They're about what you are going to do, what you are willing to tolerate. And this has been true, it really has been one of the most important lessons of the last 12 years, because for a long time, I didn't have boundaries for the sake of relationship. I wanted to be close with people. I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be, safe. Like I wanted my place at the table to be secure. And so I wouldn't set boundaries. And that obviously caused me like a bunch of stress and heartache and overwhelm and resentment, because I would find myself doing things that I didn't want to do that were against what I believed in, or against what I needed, or just against what I wanted. But I didn't really know what I wanted because I didn't know I was allowed to say what I wanted. Boundaries are an incredible thing. It also gets a little tricky because sometimes it feels like boundaries are telling someone else what they have to do. And at least in the case of my 3-year-olds, like that's not like super effective, especially these days. An example is yesterday, my kids were jumping on their bed. And I said, you guys, I need you to stop jumping on the bed. I need you to stop jumping on the bed. Annie and Quinn, please stop jumping on the bed. And at that point, I start to panic because I go, oh my gosh, they're not, like my boundary is I say, you're not allowed to jump on the bed. They're doing it anyway. What am I supposed to do here? And they're big enough at this point that they're like they're teenagers. They're a little rebellious. They're pushing the boundaries. They're pushing the limits. They want to see kind of what's going to happen. And they're pretty strong. And so I'm sitting there and mentally kind of panicking. What am I going to do here? And then I remember, again, I think about this all the time. Boundaries aren't about what someone else does. It's about what you're going to do. So I had to decide, okay, what am I going to do? I'm saying you need to stop jumping on the bed. I'm going to tell you that. If you keep doing it, I'm going to remove you from the bed. I'm going to pick you up and take you off because it's not safe for you to be there. And that second step of this is what I'm going to do. So that works the same with let's say for work. Let's say you have a boss who has really poor boundaries themselves and texts you in the middle of the night. And you guys have talked about it. First, you have to talk about it and you have to say, hey, listen, when I'm with my family, at the end of the day, I'm with my family. I get paid for these hours in the day. If you'd like to pay me for overtime, you're welcome to. We can talk about that. But I'm not working these hours. And you can say that. You can reiterate it. But if your boss is still texting you, it can feel, again, you can have that moment of panic where you're like, well, what am I supposed to do? They're not following my boundaries. But again, boundaries aren't about what the other person does. It's about what you're going to do, the limit that you set for yourself. And so at that point, you can say, you know what? I totally get it is hard to remember that, what time it is, or you're working at night and it's hard to remember that maybe I'm not. I'm going to put my phone on Do Not Disturb, but I will definitely check it first thing in the morning when I get into the office. That is the boundary that you are setting. You're not asking the other person to set up a fence on their property. You're building a fence on your own property, and you have the full right and ability to do that. One more example, and then we'll move on. So I've been with my kids not nonstop for the last handful of months. And it can get pretty loud sometimes. And, they just got a toolkit, a plastic toolkit that they're really into. And so my kids are running around the house, hammering things. And I'm sitting there going ugh, ugh, oh gosh, it's so loud. And I don't want to tell my kids, stop, you're too loud, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. That feels like I'm telling them to build a fence on their property. Like, I don't want to see the weeds in your yard, so you need to build a fence, and then feeling frustrated when they don't do it. Instead, some friends had been telling me for like years to buy these earplugs called loops, and they deaden, from my understanding, they deaden sort of the loudest noises, but let it, or like some sort of like different frequencies, but let in other sounds. So you can still have conversations while wearing them, but it just is good if you are kind of in sensory overload, which I am sometimes. And so I just got them. And so yesterday, yesterday was kind of a day. It was the first day of school. Everyone was a little bit like nuts. They were hammering things and being super loud. And I remembered, oh, I can put in my loops. So I put my headphones in and the sound was deadened. I could still hear them. I could still take care of everybody. I could still have a conversation, but I wasn't so overwhelmed. And that just felt so good. Instead of expecting someone else to like bend to appease me, I was able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to set this boundary. This is what this looks like. So that's one of the things that has been so key for me in the last 12 years. This is number 2. You don't have to be friends with people who are mean to you. And in fact, you shouldn't. You shouldn't be friends with people who are mean to you, because when we are, the trauma that inflicts on you is real. And also, who you surround yourself with seriously impacts what you're able to do in the world. When people ask me, what's the one thing I wish I could tell myself when I was 18 or I don't know, even 25 or 10 or 12, it's this. I wish I could go back and tell myself, you don't need to be friends with people who are mean to you. Unfortunately, or tragically, I would say, in girl culture, we can be really cruel to each other. I feel like as women, we can be each other's greatest assets, or we can be massive liabilities for each other. And I really, truly, as a completely adult woman, am still unpacking some of the things that were said to me when I was 12 by people who were trying to be mean, but didn't really know better. Again, with this boundaries thing, I wish that I could have said, you know what, if you're not going to treat me this way, if you're not going to treat me kindly, if you're not going to actually love me, if you're going to talk about me behind my back, if you're not going to be a safe friend for me, I'm not going to be your friend. And I learned that you can do that somewhere around 26, and it changed everything for me. And so now, I have some real standards for being my friend, and they require, I require kindness and safety in my friendships. And you can too. And it's important too, because again, it's so hard to do anything in the world when you have when the closest people in your life are the ones that are most critical of you or most unkind to you. Okay, here's number 3. I told you these are in no particular order. Number 3 is, if you want momentum, start pushing the snowball as early as possible. We were reading this story last night with the girls, and there was, I believe it was a Chinese proverb. We'll just say proverb so I don't mess up the attribution. But it said, if you want to plant a tree, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. Something to that effect. And that's something that I've really found to be true. People ask me about the podcast, about, Girls Night. They'll say, how did you grow this to be so big? And I've never had anything go viral or be, Oprah's never mentioned anything that I've done or, things like that. That's never happened to me. I just started the podcast a long time ago and just, every week, just sort of am rolling the snowball a little bit by a little bit by a little bit by a little bit. And over time, that progress starts to add up and starts to turn into some momentum. So that's something that I'm thinking about a lot, really all the time is, if you want to have really great friendships, I look at, my mother-in-law, for example, has friends that she's been friends with for 30 years. Well, if you want to have friends that you've been friends with for 30 years, the best time to start that, I guess, is 30 years ago. For those of us who were not infants or not born yet, the second best time is today, because the sooner you get started, the sooner they grow. And then, it's crazy. My best friend, Kelsey, who I'm here in Spain with, we were telling her kids the other day how long we've been friends, and it's been 15 years. And that time just sort of past and adds up. But starting early is really important, or starting now is really important. If you want friends that you've been friends with for 30 years, it's important to start as soon as you can. So if you want momentum, start rolling that snowball as early as possible. Here's number 4. You get to decide. My new book, Create a Life You Love, is all about this. And this phrase has been so life-changing for me. I don't know about you, but I am a firstborn type A people pleaser, perfectionist with some anxiety. Like, decisions are hard for me. I always want to do things right. I want to, I find myself, and I always have, looking to my right and left going like, am I on the right track? Like, am I doing this right? What are they doing? What is this supposed to look like? And that's gotten me really tripped up in a lot of seasons of life because there's no shortage of people telling you what your life is supposed to look like or what you should do. And all those people are going to tell you different things. And a bunch of them might not be correct. Or even if they are correct, we'll talk about this in a little bit, what they're saying might be right for some people, but it might not be right for you. Finally, I learned you get to decide. In most areas of life, when we're making big decisions, we're not talking about right and wrong. We're not talking about good and bad or good and evil. We're talking about like good in the color blue and good in the color green. It's like, which do you prefer? There's not a right answer. And so that phrase, you get to decide, has been so empowering for me and has given me back a lot of the authority that I think I'm actually really meant to hold in my life. Authority that I feel like God gives us over our lives. Like, kiddo, this is you, like, these are your days. How are you going to fill them? These are your weeks. This is your, there's so many decisions that I've prayed about. And I'm like, okay, God, like, should I order the cheeseburger or the hamburger? Like, which one? And he's like, do you want cheese or not? Like, it's totally up to you. I truly don't care. So that phrase, you get to decide, has been life-changing for me. And so I wrote a whole book about it. And sort of the piggyback off of that is a beautiful life isn't one size fits all. And it really isn't. I just saw this thing on Instagram from the account Busy Toddler. I love her. She's just a creative mom, like just does really creative, fun things with her kids. And I also feel like she is good at majoring in the majors and minoring in the minors. Is that the phrase? Like, not making a big deal out of things that just aren't a big deal. And so yesterday she posted something. She posted a picture of her kid sleeping in a cardboard box. And she said that years ago, her son they had a giant box at home from like a dryer. And he said, Mom, can I sleep in it tonight? And she thought about it, like her instant reaction was going to be no. But then she thought about it and she was like, this doesn't harm him. It doesn't harm our family. It's not unsafe. It's not dirty. It's not, and she kind of went through the things that are important and then was like, there is no reason for me to tell you no. Sure, go ahead. And I think he's been doing it for like 4 years. And she's like, no harm has come from it. And it's just going to be a funny story he tells when he gets bigger. And I like being able to say yes in the places that I can instead of just always saying no if something is out of the ordinary. And I think about that with our adult lives too. There are so many things where it's like, why couldn't it be this way? Well, it can. There's not one right way to do this in most areas of life. Again, it's good in blue or good in pink. Like, which color do you prefer? So that phrase, you get to decide, has changed my whole life. And it's like that and you don't have to be friends with people who are mean to you are like the two things that I think I probably needed to hear the most in different seasons. So happy to get to pass it on to you. This is sort of like piggybacking off of that. But number 5 is just because someone is in a position of authority, it doesn't mean that they're right. Take in information and weigh it. Ask if they're a person that you genuinely trust, that knows what they're talking about, and really evaluate that before you take their word as fact. Sometimes they also might be right about something, but just because something is right for someone else doesn't mean that it's right for you. This is something that, again, I told you it piggybacks off of you get to decide, but it's something I've been thinking about for the last 12 years in marriage and faith and parenting and money, that, a lot of times anyone who's teaching anything about anything is hopefully teaching from some, good research and some good introspection. And it's something that they've really thought about and spent a lot of time on. Maybe it's something that they understand in their own lives. Like hopefully you're learning from someone who's like, you're following someone down a path they've actually been on before. But sometimes those things aren't the case. Sometimes people haven't done their research or haven't done their homework. Sometimes people haven't actually experienced something and they're just sort of making it up as they go along. Most of the time, I would say people have great intentions, but occasionally they don't. Sometimes when people are giving you advice, they are just sort of shooting from the hip. They're not realizing that you're hanging on every word. Sometimes the advice that they're giving you sounds really specific to you, but it's more general, or it's really great advice for someone in different circumstances, but this person doesn't know your circumstances. And so if they did, they might give you different advice. There are all kinds of things. And then there's the person who's giving you advice about something also has their own experiences that color the way that they see the world and the things that have happened in their own life. And so it just, again, something that I've really gotten myself in trouble with is taking, things that people say as fact and running with them and assuming that they know better than I do. Sometimes that's the case, but with everything I'm learning, and I've learned to pause, take a beat, evaluate what they said, take a look at the person who said it and my relationship with them, and to just wait a second before I take the thing that they said as the indisputable truth of the world. There's just a random example about this is when Carl and I first got married, people told us that you should go to bed at the same time. They said that is the key to a great marriage, is going to bed at the same time. And so we tried for a while, except for we have completely different circadian rhythms. Carl goes to bed super late at night and sleeps in a little later and also needs less sleep than I do. I'm more of if I could be a 10 to 8:30 person, that would be ideal for me. And going to bed at 10, he doesn't ever. And so we really tried to fit ourselves into this prescribed box that someone gave us that was just sort of this offhand thing. But we took it as fact, truth. These people have been married longer than us. They know, we don't. We need to do what they said. And it didn't work for us and it wasn't good for us. And it took me a while to realize that they don't know me. They don't know Carl. They don't know how we sleep. And also that's true for some people. It's not true for everybody. And that's just true with a lot of different things. We need to look at the person who's telling us something, the circumstances they told it, in which they told us the thing. That's a really hard thing. And I think especially, as we get older and as we've had more life experiences, for some of us, those life experiences have been hard. I know there are a great many people who have had some pretty tough experiences in church, for example, where someone in leadership hurt them in some way or another. And those things are really hard to reconcile. One of the things that has just been really helpful for me is realizing that everybody's human. No one has the final say on anything. I get to participate in the conversation. I get to evaluate the things that they're saying. I get to, take what lines up with the other things that I know to be true. I can release the rest. And I just think that has been a really healing and healthier way for me to go through life, and something I just didn't know a while back. Okay. Number 6 is it won't be this way forever. When my kids were first born, going from no kids to 2 infants was a lot. It was a giant transition. Really took me a while to get through it. And there was this one moment when they stopped napping for a while. They were 6 months old, and it was my birthday. So right around my birthday, they stopped napping. My best friend Michelle was in town to hang out with me and just celebrate with me and, just be together. And I just remember being so frustrated and so overwhelmed by the fact that they just wouldn't nap. And because they weren't napping, they were crying a lot. And it was a lot. Around that time, I learned that shushing them in a dark place was helpful. So I spent a lot of time in dark closets at that time. And so it was my birthday. I wanted to hang out with my best friend who was there. I wanted my kids to just take a nap, and I wanted them to stop crying. And I had my daughter Quinn in my closet in the dark. and I'm shushing her, I'm rocking, and just feeling so like honestly trapped in that moment. And I don't hear the audible voice of God, but every once in a while, I feel like God says something to me where it's just so sudden in my brain, just this thought that I wasn't thinking on my own, just sort of drops into my mind. And it was one of those moments. And the thought was, it won't be this way forever. And I knew, like, instantly understood that there were sort of two meanings to that. One was, this is a season. Your kids will not always be this small. This will not always be this hard. You're gonna get through it. Like it's just not gonna be this hard forever. And that was so relieving to me because I'm like, I don't like missing my birthday because I'm shushing a baby in the dark. Like I don't like being stuck in dark closets with crying babies. It's not my idea of a perfect birthday. And so that thought was really comforting. It's not gonna be this way forever. But then the other second meaning of it that I just really instantly understood was this is a really specific moment in time, a really specific situation and moment of your life with some specific sweetness to it that won't always be here. Like you won't always have 6-month-olds. You won't always have your girls won't always be babies that you can rock, that you can hold in your arms. They won't always be this little. I'm not always going to be able to hold them and rock them and shush them, and they're not always going to fit in my arms. They're not always going to want to be held by me. Like this is a really sweet moment of life. And even though it's hard, and even though like it's totally fine for it to be hard, it's totally fine for you to be looking forward to it being over. But also while it's here, don't miss it. And that is a phrase and an idea and a concept that, I mean, I just have thought about in every season of life since. It won't be this way forever. Don't worry, it will not be this way forever. But also, it's not going to be this way forever. So don't miss it. Okay, number 7 is something that I've thought about a lot in our move to Spain. And really, in a lot of ways, it was sort of the part of the inspiration for this big move. And so the idea is more isn't always more. We set up our life in Nashville really intentionally. We try to make really conscious, really thoughtful decisions about all the big and little parts of our lives. And so we had bought a bigger house. We had sort of expanded. We had dug down some roots. And we were in a place we thought we'd be in for a really long time. But because of all the other things that were happening in our life all at the same time, work and 2 kids and the cost of childcare and the cost of everything going up and just all these things, we found ourselves with a life that just felt so big and so heavy that it just was really hard to manage. And that's really kind of all we were doing was just sort of managing it. It didn't feel like we were really thriving. It didn't feel like we were really present. It felt like we were just sort of getting through. And we had a lot. We've never had as much as we did in that season, and as much stuff, as much space, as much, square footage, as much furniture, as much, like we just had never had that much. But in that season, I learned, you know what? I don't think more is always more. And so the process of the last handful of months in moving to Spain, we sold both of our cars. We rented out that house. We got rid of a ton of our stuff. We probably own like 1/20th of the amount of things that we used to. That more isn't always more. And when you have less, you, I think, are able to do more with it and do more outside of managing your stuff and managing your space. So more isn't always more. Number 8 is it's never too late to make a new best friend. I think that kind of, when we talked about wanting friends that we've been friends with for 30 years, it is really sad to get to, a certain age, literally any age, and go, man, I thought that I would have met my best friend when I was like 6. And so by now we would have been married. We would have been best friends for however many years. Like I thought that this would happen sooner. And it's really easy to feel like it just might be too late for me. It's easy to feel like you missed the boat, that if you didn't meet your best friend back in middle school, that it's too late. And it's just not true. I have made best friends in basically every season of life that I've ever been in so far. And it's amazing that, it feels like everyone already found their person, and that is not true. Some people did meet their best friends really early in life, but things also change. One crazy example is we moved to Spain 2 months ago, and we met this just really awesome girl or woman, sorry, I just always call us girls, who grew up here. She's lived in this city for her whole life. I mean, she knows a bazillion people. But when I met her, she asked if I wanted to hang out, and she's gotten to know my best friend Kelsey as well. And I asked her, like, why do you want to hang out with us? Like, we're new here. We speak Spanish, but like we're not native. We're not locals. We would like to be. We're working on it. But like, yeah, why? Like, I feel like you probably know a bazillion people. And she said, yeah, but like, a lot of my friends have moved to different places or are in different seasons of life. And I realized, oh, well, that's true for all of us. So even though it feels like everyone already met their best friend a long time ago, it's too late for you. It's never too late. You can always make a new best friend. It takes time and it takes intentionality, but not that much time. And then once you get to know each other, like that deepens and grows and gets better with all the time that passes after. And I mean, Lord willing, we still all have a lot of time. So even if you make a best friend today, like you have so much life that you still get to live with this person. So repeat that to yourself. It is never too late to make a new best friend. And then also, friendship is so important. It really can feel like breakfast, where it's like we push it off and we go like, I'll be fine without it. But then we get halfway through the day and we're cranky and miserable, and we're better. We're better with friends. We're better when we have people in our corner. We really, really need it. It's not a luxury, it's an essential. And I'm so glad that I've treated it that way over the years, because my life is so much richer today as a result. Okay, number 9 is, if it's not going to matter to you at 80, don't let it consume you right now. The thing that I think about with this specifically is body image. So if it's not going to matter to you at 80, don't let it consume you right now. And I really do think about this with body image. As much as we try to reverse or freeze, or like reverse aging or freeze our bodies and skin and foreheads and all these things in time right now, we all are going to get older and we're all going to look different, and things are going to sag and break and get run down and like get looser and wrinkle and all these things. Like, it's just going to happen. And I think that when I'm 80 or 85 or 100 or however old I get to live to be, I just am not going to be thrilled that I spent as much time worrying about 5 pounds on my body as much as I have. Throughout the years, there have been times where I've really struggled with like my body and being dissatisfied with it. And I just don't know that my 80-year-old self is going to think that that was time well spent. So I'm trying to remember that now, and remember that there are just way more things that I want to dedicate my life to than having my body contoured in exactly the perfect way. I think the cost on that is too high and the return is too low. And I think that my 80-year-old self will agree. So I'm trying to really keep that in mind now. Number 10 is your mental health matters for you and for everybody around you. And it's not a DIY job. And that brings me sort of into the next one. So I'm gonna clump them together because I actually did 13. Don't tell the people who are in charge. I don't want to get in trouble. Okay, so your mental health matters, and it's not a DIY job. And to go along with that, we really are only as strong as our support system. We need to be better at asking for the help we need. Our mental health affects everything. It's like our vision. Like if your vision is skewed a certain way, everything you look at is going to also skew that certain way. If you have this bent in your mind and heart and past experiences that make you feel like you're not worthy of love, you're going to walk into every interaction you have with anybody feeling like you're not worthy of love. And it's really hard for anyone to convince you otherwise, or at least that was what I experienced. Same for trauma. Like trauma, having gone through something really hard in our past, it comes up in our present, and it's going to come up in our present. It's going to tinge our present with the color of that trauma until we can start to heal from it. There's just no way around healing than through. And not only does your mental health matter for you and the way that you see and interact with the world, but it really, really impacts the people around you, specifically your family, specifically your significant other, your kids. That's something that I've been really, really aware of is that, my kids are subject to, like, my family can really only be as healthy as I am. And if I am unhealthy in a certain way, like my kids are going to reap the rewards of that, I guess. They're also going to reap the rewards of me being healthier and me being in a better place and able to regulate myself and not acting out of, things from my past or things from, they're just going to really benefit. And so being intentional and proactive with our mental health, making sure that we're as healthy as we can be, that we're dealing with our stuff, that we're healing in the way we need to heal, and that we're asking for the help we need to get through these things. Because again, our brains are complicated places. It's especially hard to navigate through them when it's your own mind. Having a guide and a map and someone to cheer you on and give you sandwiches along the way helps so much. And that's what therapy is for me. So your mental health is really important, and it's not just important for you. It's important for everyone around you. It affects everyone around you. And it's not a DIY job. So get the help that you need. We really are only as strong as our support system. And, kind of one more thing on this is that we don't get extra points in life for doing things by ourselves. It feels like we do. I'm so independent. I'm so strong. I'm so low maintenance. There's that meme that goes around that's talks about wanting to be the most efficient, quick, tidy person in the TSA line. And you want everyone, once you're through, you want everyone to go wow, they did such a good job. Or wow, look how efficient and quick and low maintenance they are or something. I totally do that. I'm watch how tidily I can get through this. Again, harder when you have 2 3-year-olds. But no one cares how fast we go through TSA. They just don't care unless you go super slow and the person behind you is late. Then they kind of care. But nobody cares. Nobody cares. And nobody cares if you did something on your own. It doesn't get you any more points. The people who have done the best things in the world have done it with coaches and support systems and teammates and partners and with funding and with support and, all these different things. You don't get extra points for doing something by yourself. And by choosing to say, I have to do this alone, I have to do this by myself, you miss out on what could have been possible if you would have accepted help and done it together as a team instead. Okay, here is number 11. This is a sort of new language that this is the first time I've talked about it in this way. And so you can let me know if this resonates with you or not. I'm still kind of feeling it out. You can't outsource being the CEO of your life. This kind of goes back to you get to decide, and that there's not one exact right way to do things, that a beautiful life isn't one size fits all. But when it comes to making decisions about our lives, there are things that have to be done and decisions that have to be made all the time, every day, about a million different things. And we're the one who has to make the decisions. I guess we can outsource this role, or we can just sort of neglect it. We can just sort of not make decisions, or we can just do what someone else tells us to do in all these different ways, whether it's how to spend our money, or, what clothes to pick out, or what house to live in, or what job to do. We can just do what someone else tells us to do, or we can just sort of not make a decision and just sort of see what happens. But you're the only one that's going to really suffer the consequences for that. One of my favorite writing teachers, Ashlyn, talks about how you can't outsource your push-ups. It's just something that you need to do in your life. If you want to have stronger arms, you got to be the one to do the push-ups. And this is true for life too. You can't outsource being the CEO of your life. Someone needs to make decisions about your life. And if you have a certain idea about how you want it to turn out, if you care about the result, then you need to be the one to participate and make some decisions. This is especially important for us as women because for all of time, people have had really strong opinions about the way that women live their lives, and they've had conflicting opinions. And we can spend our lives being caught up in the exact right way that someone wants us to do something, or we can live in accordance with the loudest person in our life and what they think is good and right and best. Or we can gather inspiration and information and then make a thoughtful choice about what we want to do and what reflects what's most important to us. So yeah, that's something I've just been thinking about. You just can't outsource being the CEO of your life. That's something that you got to do. You got to make some decisions. And then the last one, number 12, again, I told you these are kind of in a random order, but if you want to succeed at something, you have to be brave enough to fail and fail publicly. And that's super hard. It's super hard. That's something that, I think specifically in my line of work, if you're wanting to start a podcast or something, you're like, I really am dreaming about this. I really think I could do this. I'm excited about the idea. If you want to see if it works, you have to be brave enough to try. And if you're going to try something, there is a likelihood that it's going to fail. And the other thing is that you have to be okay with that, and you have to go anyway. And the other thing is, for me, I'm so tempted to want to dip my toe in the water and be like, I'm going to put out one podcast episode and see, does it take off? Is everyone obsessed with it? Okay, no. Okay, it was a horrible idea. I'm just going to pull it down. And that's like trying to get a feel, you can't really get a feel for how cold the water is if you just dip a toe in. That's not a good indication. You kind of have to get all the way in. And that's hard because it's a lot. You just have a lot more to lose that way. It feels safer to be like, well, I just casually tried something. It didn't go great, so I'm going to pull out now. But you really don't know if it's going to work unless you really cannonball all the way in. And yeah, the risk of being embarrassed, or the risk of looking silly, or the risk of people seeing you fail is greater that way. But I think it's just really hard to be successful at anything if you don't really give it a try. That's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and just trying to really make sure I'm still doing is because really, what's the worst that can happen? Someone saw you try something and fail at it. They've tried and failed too, or maybe they haven't, but then they've missed out on so many things that they might have been good at or might have succeeded at. I just don't think there's any value in a life that's half-lived or that's so safe that you can never fail, because that means you actually never can succeed in anything. One of the things that I've found to be really inspirational lately, really inspiring, is, so we're here with my best friend Kelsey's family, and out of all of, we all speak various degrees of Spanish, but her husband Tyler is the newest of the adults at speaking Spanish. It's something that he hasn't really done very much of. He's really learning. And he's been talking to his kids about it a lot, just saying, Dad doesn't speak Spanish. I'm going to go back to school, and I'm going to, he's going to take some language classes, and he's going to learn. And he's putting himself out there every single time he opens his mouth to order a sandwich or say thank you or ask someone a question. And it's a really beautiful thing, though. And he's so intentional about it because he wants his kids to see him try something that he's not automatically good at, that he doesn't already know how to do. He wants them to see him try and look a little silly and fail a little bit, but then get up and try again. And I think that example is just the most incredible example that he could give for them. There's real power in allowing ourselves to be bad at something and allowing other people to see it. It's so brave. It is so inspiring. And I think very few people spend as much time thinking about how silly you look as you do. You're way more worried about your silliness. You're way more aware of your silliness than anyone else is. So those are my 12 things. They are 12 super important things that I've learned in the last 12 years. There are probably 1,000 more, but these were the things that just really stuck out to me as I was getting ready for this. I'm so grateful to spend this time with you, and I'm so grateful for your support of my shops. And thank you for being part of our corner of the internet. It just is. This is the best job. I love it so much. I thank you so much for your support and allowing me to get to do the thing that I feel like I'm really meant to do in the world. I love each and every one of you, and I'm so excited for the things that we have ahead. Like we've done 12 years down, hopefully a bazillion to go, because the list of ideas in my brain of things I want to do together, of things I want to create, of resources I want to bring into the world, of adventures I want to go on together. It's so long. So much more to come. But thanks for being here today. I just am so grateful for you, and I will talk to you guys soon.